finishing up James 3 today. I did want to go, this is our quote. I've been putting quotes up every day, and it seems I try to find the most interesting one. Knowledge comes from learning, and wisdom comes from living. So the part where we get sometimes is we and this is right in line with what James is talking about in most of this book. We get the learning aspect down. It's easy to come to church, and it's easy to sit down, and it's easy to read the Bible, and it's easy to hear people to talk and go through things, but it's so hard to put that knowledge together with the actual acts of, faith without works. There is faith, but when we don't have the works, it's incomplete, right? We can be the smartest person in the world. I mean, there are really smart people out there, far smarter than anybody in this room, but taking that intelligence and being able to apply it to make the world better, to make people better, it kind of oftentimes gets missed. When we have a lack of understanding how to use it, it makes us incomplete, like I was talking about. So we're going to learn how to show our wisdom and our knowledge by how we live. So I'll show you my faith by my works. So if we show our faith by our works, we're going to show that knowledge and that wisdom we have by how we live, not by, hey, I'm smarter than you or I know a lot of stuff. Knowing a lot of things doesn't mean that you know a lot of things, because you don't know how to use it and apply it. So I wanted to go back to verse 8, because I didn't get to spend much time on it last week. I just wanted to go over that real quick. So in taming the tongue, it takes a lot of effort. It's almost impossible to do it on our own. And that's where God's word comes in. We learned from verse 7 that it's easier to rule over all the creatures in the world than to rule over the tongue. Such a small thing. But that tongue is not just the tongue. It's guided by our heart. It's guided by what's inside of us. Most give up or use excuses to cover the faults of the tongue. So we talked about last week how, we're only human. We're not perfect. Right? And if we're not perfect, we get that. God's told us numerous times and reminded us that we are not perfect. We're flawed. We're humans. But to use those excuses instead of trying to correct your heart, instead of trying to correct what's inside of us, it's so easy for things to build up inside of us, and then that evil comes out of us. And I know I say evil like we're bad people, but there is that evil inside of us where if we forget to fill that void inside of us, I think we talked about in chapter 1, that void inside of us, when it empties out of us, we need to fill it back up with that good. And if we don't, then that evil lingers inside of us and can so easily come up. Small amount of deadly poison, when it talks about that restless evil full of deadly poison, just a small amount of poison from a given creature can kill. It can just kill us off. And that's kind of where that tongue comes from and how it can fill us up with, the word deadly here is used to indicate the possibility of spiritual death associated with what we say and how we lead people off course. So what we say here each and every day can actually deter people. If we say the wrong thing when we go outside of this building, then we can deter people and we can take them away. And that's just as much as that deadly poison that we're talking about. All right, let's go ahead and go into James 3, verses 9 and 10. With it, meaning our tongue, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the image and in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought to be so, or not ought to be this way. So when we think of the tongue, we know that it can be used for good and evil. We know that good people can say bad things. We know that bad people can sometimes say good things. That makes sense. It goes back to that good things happen to bad people and vice versa. So we praise God, and then we turn around and we curse those that were created from Him. And that's, you often don't think of it like this, but as we curse the likeness of Him, we're actually cursing Him. We're actually cursing Jesus. It's something so simple that our emotions and our mind get so twisted up, and we think that, just because I said something bad to somebody, he won't hear, and that's not true, and it can so easily happen. If it does happen, we have forgiveness and we have other things, but it's important to try not to say it in the first place. And it's hard to do that. It's hard for me. I've done it, and more recent than I care to say. But I mean, it's one of those things where you often don't want to do it. But we forget about the love that God expects us to have for everyone. Love thy neighbor, enemy, basically everyone. We're told to love everyone. That's what he says. Obviously, first love God, then love everyone else. So why do we have this hate in our hearts? Does anybody know why this hate sometimes it just comes out of us and boils like, water overboiling over a pot? Does anybody know where that comes from and why we have it? Even good people have it. Does anyone know? Mm-hmm. Exactly. We judge others, and we take that idea of this person has more than me. And this person, you can just tell by looking at them that they have it all figured out. So I envy them. We come to this building, and I say building because this is not the church, but we come to this building, and we think we're in this perfect little bubble that as long as we come in here, we have to act right, we have to do right, we have to be right. But we leave, and the world is out there. The worldly passions that we talk about that are completely opposite of that spiritual passion that we should have. It's everywhere, and we can't avoid it. We can't live in that bubble and take it with us wherever we go, right? We can't be those people that, have this shut off from the entire world and expect that no one will see that we're really a Christian, and vice versa. We're expected to say, well, nothing can affect me, but it does. So what is the church? I just said, we are the church. So wherever we go and whatever we do should be in favor with God. And I get sidetracked, and everybody gets sidetracked. And that little forgetfulness comes in, and we forget that, hey, I'm right here, but I'm not with God at this moment. And he's still watching us, whether we take him in or not. We need to fill our hearts with his love instead of the evil of this world. And that's really hard to do, and I get it. But how do we achieve that? How do we get to that point where we have a barrier kind of around ourselves in that we don't allow that evil to affect us? One small thing, and I'm going to say a story, and it's not true, but I thought it was kind of cool. And this kind of tells a story of how one small thing can lead up to something so important and so impactful in our lives. So the story of a man or a person in general, doesn't matter, but we'll say this was a man, was looking for a job, had been out of work for several months, was getting to the point where the funds were going away and he needed a job. After a lot of resumes, he finally landed the interview that he wanted. Finally got it. So he's got it scheduled for the next day, has a good night's sleep, wakes up in the morning, gets a shower, gets dressed, goes to get his coffee, spills coffee on his shirt, has to go back and change it, then gets out, gets ready to go, gets in his car, leaves, gets down the street, resume, he forgot it. Has to turn around and go get it. So now he's got the resume, he's got everything he needs, takes off and drives. Well, now he's running late, all right? Now traffic builds up. Stop traffic. Now he's sitting there in the car and he's getting antsy and everything is working around against him. Well, now the traffic starts to let up. Now he's driving to work. So as he gets closer to work, or that job where he's doing the interview, as he's turning over to go, somebody cuts him off. So he pulls around. At this point, his blood's boiling. Turns around, goes around the car, starts yelling and screaming at the car, and says, I'm sure, some things that shouldn't have been said, right? Then turns and goes off to his job interview. Goes up to the business. Now they say, go sit in this conference room. right? I think you guys know where I'm going with this, right? Goes into the sit down. He said, they'll be right with you. The interviewer walks in, and it's the guy he was yelling at, right? So I know it's a fake story, but think about the implications of how one little tiny thing builds up and builds up. And that's that world we're talking about, that as the world builds up around us, we can oftentimes fill that void, that emptiness that we're trying to get rid of, back with those evil thoughts. And that's what, I guess the analogy would be, if he had something filled up with good, every single part of that would have not been as so impactful, right? Okay, so let's go back to 10 real quick, and we'll look at that. You ever heard this term that people that go to church are nothing but hypocrites? And we decide that as a non-Christian or somebody who doesn't go to the particular church, they write themselves off and they push themselves away. And this was from this Justified by Works that I've been reading. And it kind of stuck with me, this one particular part. And he says that why would some people go to church, not go to church, and condemn themselves to hell based on others' actions? Why would they do that, knowing that just one particular Christian, as we're out and about and we do something wrong, they say, hey, I don't want to go to that church. It happens, and although we think that we don't impact that, we do so much more than we think. So seeing people go to a church, and then when we leave, we act in an unchristian way, could be a good reason. So how we act and what we do can have a major impact on those around us.
Yes, but those same people that's talking about the hypocrites in church, there's hypocrites in the grocery store and everywhere else, but they still go there.
Yeah, that's true, right? They do. They still go to the places where there's hypocrites.
It's all about an excuse.
It is. Yeah, it's an excuse, and it's the severity of what it is we're talking about. So if it's going to the grocery store, it's not that big of a deal. They're hypocrites and whatever. So I'll just do, I'll order my groceries from Publix and have them sent to me, right? Or I'll do the Walmart. That way I don't have to deal with the people, right? Yeah. So all right, let's go to, wanted to read this, 1 John 4:20. This is right in line with what James is talking about. If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. God's creation is right here, right in front of us. And if he's right here in front of us, how can we, with God watching us, how can we take that and curse those, and we haven't even seen God? God, in theory, doesn't want to see us if we're going to act like that. That's what they're talking about as far as sin goes. If we can't act right here, then we can't act right in heaven, right? And that's important. I know that there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and we use that excuse that keeps coming up of we're only human. But at some point, we're only human here, and we're only human in heaven, or not. It's important that we do it here now, and do it in ways that we have not done it before, or do it in ways that we did when we were younger, when we did it right. Let's get back to that point this year where we can actually do things right, and where we can actually be that person that God wants us to be here so that we can be that in heaven. Okay, let's go to, every soul is important. We can build up those or break them down based on our actions. Depending on what we say and what we do and how we act, is a definitive answer on whether they're going to say yes or no when it comes to coming here and confessing their sins and being brought in baptism and really trying to do the right thing. And, we see other places where it's an entertainment value, or it's something that makes it less meaningful, but it's more of a reason that they can go there and get that entertainment out of it. And once you take that all away from that particular church, it really doesn't have as much meaning to it. So if you go to those ones where they're on TV and they have satellites and everything, it becomes that idea that there's something trying to mask something else. And once you take it away, it's all gone. All right, so when we're Christians, we come with examination, right? And this is my favorite one for the day. All right, so we are judged, we are examined under a microscope once people find out we are who we are, right? And we're children of God, and we come with that little bit of examination. So we're judged almost instantly. When we do not have control of our actions, we allow ourselves to speak evil, to be evil for that particular moment. And it can expose us as hypocrites. It can destroy credibility, destroys our influence for Christ. It breaks down that barrier where we no longer have the same influence that we had if we showed good and a pure heart. It makes others reject the church and prevents others from following Christ. And James says at the end, he says, "My brethren, these things ought not to be this way." And basically all he's saying is it's not right. So stop it. It's not right that you do these things if you're doing them. And if you're not, that's great. But maybe you can teach somebody, have that teaching moment where you see it happening and stop and say, hey, this ought to be this way, right? It's not me saying it again. This is what the Bible says. All right, let's go on. So let's go to verses 11 and 12. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Nor can salt water produce fresh. So right now, James is trying to give us an understanding of what he just said. He's trying to give another analogy because that's how a lot of people think, and they can put things with how things really are. You've got wells back in those times, and water's coming up, and once that water turns bitter, you can no longer drink that water. You'll get sick. It's now gone. They're not talking about salt water in this first part. They're talking about bitter water. Jason and I, several others, have been to Peru, and if you drink the water, you're going to be sick for weeks and weeks. You're not going to feel good. You're going to throw up. You're going to have all kinds of things happening to you. And that's what they're talking about is when you have, it can't come from the same. You're not going to have fresh or bitter. You're going to have either bitter or fresh, and then that fresh water is cut off. It will become bitter, and you can't drink it anymore. And he's talking about the source of where it comes from. The same as our words, they come from our heart, right? So if you think of the well, how that well is dug, it's our heart. It's where we generate all of our emotions and all of our true feelings from. When those true feelings come up in anger and wrath and we speak ill of people, it's in there. And it's hard to say that I have that in me. We all do at some point. It's just how much does it affect us. So if we come, let's see here, Matthew 12:34 through 35. You brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak what is good? For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. The good man brings out of his good treasure what is good, and the evil man brings out of his evil treasure what is evil. Sorry, my contacts are messing up a little bit. All right, so the nature of being a Christian is to have a pure heart. So that is where we need to focus most of our energy is how do I get that heart pure? How do I get that physical inside of the well inside me? How do I fill that with only pure water? There can be no evil in us, but unfortunately there will be. But that's where the forgiveness comes in. That's where everything. So if we focus every single one of us this year, if every one of us focuses on everyone to have that pure heart, we will all become better people. And we will all bring more people into this church, to this building, and have it to be where we can do good with everything around us. It sounds simple, but it's not. It's so not to have that pure heart. And the word Christian means one who is like Christ. So we need to try to be like Christ. We know we will never be that, but We can do our best to be there. And we can hold others accountable if we see them sway or if we see that they're going through trouble. If we reach out to others around us, we can do that. If we're cursing man, speaking evil, we've talked about that, then we are actually doing it to Christ himself. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts before we go on?
Back on the anger part,
Mm-hmm.
when we put our expectations, like what we expect of ourselves, onto someone else, and they don't meet those expectations, that can bring on totally unnecessary things.
It's hard to have those expectations because we have to have a little bit of understanding that if we expect something and we don't get that in return, and that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah. When we expect that and don't get that in return, then we judge and we say, well, why can't you be like me? Or why can't you be like, other people? It's difficult to have that understanding. But if you have that understanding, that's a great point. To expect so much out of somebody and then not get it, I didn't even think about it. It's a good, wow, that just woke me up a little bit, huh? Bottom line is, let's go to 13. We'll start to understand what the bottom line comes to be. It's an easier way to understand this verse. Let me read it first, and then we'll go into the easier understanding the way I thought it might help me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Story of the guy going for the interview,
Mm-hmm.
going back to Matthew, out of the heart, the mouth speaketh.
Mm-hmm.
So, down deep in us, we can disguise it other times.
Mm-hmm.
When we get upset like that, that's when what's truly in our heart
Mm-hmm.
flows out.
It does. When that well, actually, there was my niece and nephew, Nason, her fiance, they had an issue with their house this past weekend. And it's this thing called hydropressure or something like that, where so much pressure built up from the rain that it burst and caused cracks in the foundation, in the side wall and everything, and water starts pouring in. And it's that idea that we hold on to something so much that it builds up this pressure inside of us, and there's no hope for it. It just comes out and bursts out of us, and there's nothing we can do to control it. And it's finding that one thing, and for most of it, it is one thing that we can find to go to where it kind of releases that pressure. It causes our bodies to drain out that fear and that anger and that overall issue that we have inside of us. So it's really important that we let it go. But how do we let it go? What do you guys use to let it go? Does anybody use something? Have you found it yet? Because if you haven't, I'd like to know. Maybe yours will work on me, right? All right, so,
It might be one of the reasons for praying continually,
oh yeah.
because it does keep our frame of mind
Mm-hmm.
where it needs to be. I'm no master at that belief, but that is the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, praying without ceasing is you say, okay, well, I'm not supposed to ever stop praying, and everything I do, I pray, right? And I've talked about it before where I drive, and Ray's told me to make sure I keep my eyes open when I'm driving, but you got to keep your eyes open when you're driving, but you can still do it, and it can be a constant prayer. And I told the kids on Wednesday night, we were talking about prayer, and I said, what do you pray? When you pray, is it always that same prayer? You say it over and over again, and when it comes to dinner time, you say that prayer at dinner time. That prayer we can go back to in chapter 1 is make that prayer meaningful as well. So praying just to pray is one thing, like that same exact prayer, and I had a prayer when I was younger, and it was that same exact prayer for dinner, and we all said it, and that was how it went. But there was repetition in it, and there was no meaning in it to me. And sorry, Mom, Dad. But there wasn't a whole lot of meaning to it, but now there's so much more meaning to a prayer. I'd rather almost not say the prayer at all than do it without meaning it, right? So there is that prayer, but make sure you're praying for something. If you really have that anger in your body and you really have that anger, pray for it and mean it and know that there's that something's going to come out of it no matter what it is.
Praying without ceasing as much of an attitude of your life in a way that you can go to God anytime
Yeah.
without your prayer.
Right. It's about the way you live your life. And we'll get to, I think, that very thing here in a few, is praying for it, but living the idea of the prayer. If I pray that I'm going to be good today, well, then live that prayer. That's that continuation of praying without ceasing is I prayed, and now I'm living that prayer. Because sometimes the answer in the prayer is you just doing the right thing, and that can be. All right, so who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show his good behavior in his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. So an easier way to understand this is, if you have wisdom and knowledge, then show it to us by how you live. Do it without being loud and bragging about what you have. Be humble and patient in what you do. So when you pray to say, I'm not going to be angry today, or on my drive, let's just make it simple. On my drive from my house to my job, I'm not going to get mad. There's an intersection right when you're getting off of 280, or off of 459 and 280, and it's a summit right there. That is a black hole for people to get angry. And we just lose our emotions. I don't know why. But for me, I have to get off and go all the way over to actually turn left at the next traffic light. And for some reason, I always seem to get mad at that one particular moment. So as I'm getting off the expressway now, I make it a point to say, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to do it. And I've actually worked it out for the past few days. I haven't gotten mad, and I've just kind of let it go. And there's a lot of angry people out there, but that one particular point is a part for me where I could allow evil into my life, but I don't. Right? So next time you're driving by there, think of me. All right. He begins this chapter, he begins to put chapters 1 and 2 together. He's actually merging these chapters now. And, if you think about it this way, if someone claims to be religious, that's 1:26. Then show us by his works. That's 2:18. So you're putting these together basically and saying, if you're claiming to be religious and you're claiming to have that faith, then show us by your works. Take that understanding and put it all together, and now let's actually put it into some use. Knowledge is simply knowing something. Wisdom is actually understanding, and that goes back to that first slide that I showed you. It's understanding how to apply the knowledge. Wisdom is living it. Being really smart doesn't mean you are wise, and vice versa. You can think you're wise and not have the knowledge. You can think you know it, but you actually don't. And that's where it goes back to the lying part that we talked about also. Those who think they are wise but have no knowledge are mistaken as mere liars. And that will come out. If you don't know something, when we talk about people who don't believe in the faith completely at all, generally they're very smart. They've read the Bible several times and probably know the Bible better than I do. And it's very hard to talk to somebody who has that knowledge of the Bible and is going to disprove you every single step of the way, and they're going to catch you if you don't know what you're talking about. So it's one of those things where you can think you're religious, and you can think you know about it, but if you start speaking and don't know, you're going to look like a fool. I've done it. It's not pretty. It really isn't. So don't let it go to your head. Don't assume that you know every single word that's in the Bible. Don't expect that you know every single interpretation of what God was meaning or what the writers of the books were meaning. All right, we're going to try and get through this. Okay, so let's go to James 3, 14 through 16. But if you have bitter jealousy and self-ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant, and so lie against the truth. The wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, and demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. So now, in James' fashion, here comes the but, right? Here comes that part that we can look to for James to give us the right answer. If you contain these qualities, such as envy, which is jealousy, strife, being selfish, you have an ego, or it says do not have an ego and think you are more important than anybody else. I'm not more important than anybody else in this room. It's just that I happen to be up here trying to, like what Becky said, facilitate something that might help you out in your life. I'm not more important. Drew's not more important. There's nobody on this earth that's more important than anyone else. We're all humans. So to lie against the truth is not the words themselves, and that's where we're going to this. So the same with prayer, and you pray and you ask for that prayer, and then you live that prayer. To lie against the truth is not the words themselves. It's more the act of doing what the word tells us not to do, to be haughty, to do all those things. If we get to the point where we're doing things that are not in accordance with God's will, then we're not doing the right thing. And in verse 15, here's some descriptions about that. Any of this is nonsense and couldn't possibly be spiritual, right? Any of this, that what he's talking about, is all nonsense. And the reality of most of the things in this world are nonsense. They don't really make a whole lot of, there's no reason to why somebody likes a Ferrari over maybe somebody, Pinto. Everybody knows a Pinto. I was looking around to see if somebody wouldn't know a Pinto, but maybe Nathan. Why do we think a Ferrari is so much more important and so much more appealing to us than a car that means nothing to us? In chapter 1, verses 17, every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above. It's from above. It's not from here, right? And we have to remember that and keep that in our hearts. It's a worldly passion, and that comes from Satan himself. Everything on this world comes from Satan himself. And yes, we can use things to build us up, and yes, we can use things for good. We talked about fire, how fire can be good for us, but it can also be detrimental to us. Verse 6, of chapter 3, it says, and is set on fire by hell. So we have to remember that everything in this world can be set on fire by hell, which is Satan himself. All right, so 16, let's go into that verse also. So think of distorter as chaos. Think of it as, just everything that could possibly go wrong in this world, which oftentimes does, like that story. It implies sides fighting, dissension in the ranks. It's war in some cases. And Becky, to your point, we're envious and we're jealous of others, and it causes our thoughts and hearts to turn. So we can think of that person, and we can be jealous, and we can think that I want that, and that can turn our hearts evil. False teaching. We know about false teaching, right? It's gone on through forever, since, back to the beginning. We think and we look at people, working their way up the ranks only to try and destroy the faith. So people they come in, they act, perfect, and they're really good, and they come up and maybe become a deacon or an elder, preacher, and only to destroy an entire church. It can happen. It has happened, I'm sure. We must use our godly wisdom. When we turn to human wisdom, we give into evil thoughts and leave God out of the picture. Have you done it before? Left God out of what you're trying to do? Maybe thinking that when you're younger or even recently. You try to do something and you figure, and it goes back to that prayer. You pray for something and you just assume that it's never going to happen and God's not going to do it, so I got to do it myself. And that's where we go wrong. And that's where when we leave God out, we turn to that human wisdom. And human wisdom will never get us to heaven. All right, I'm actually moving on pretty good here. All right, so let's do 17 and 18. We've got a little bit of time left, and I think we'll finish it out good. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy, good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So right now, James is contrasting earthly wisdom. He's giving us the understanding that earthly wisdom is one thing and spiritual wisdom is all these things that we're talking about right now. So it comes back to the knowledge versus wisdom. God's word is the knowledge. We can read a book, We can read every single part of the Bible. We're doing our reading this year, and we can read every single part of it. But if we don't use our wisdom, if we don't take that knowledge and do it, God gives it freely to us. I know we have to buy the Bible, but, if we can be particular about it, but it's freely given to us. There's no cost. You can read it. But if we use his word in our daily lives, then we will not be spoiled. If we can read the book and we can read the words that come out of this Bible, but if we leave and we don't use it, this world out here is going to spoil us, and it's going to tear us apart. We will have peace. We will be able to be gentle to those around us. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath. Have you ever been nice to someone that's being mad, that's being angry, that's trying to tear you down, and you're nice to them? It can either, number one, make them a lot more angry, but it can also have a stopping point for them, and they realize, hey, what I'm doing is wrong because I'm not getting what I want to get out of you. We teach our kids that if you have a bully, just don't give in to them. Don't cry. Don't get upset. Don't feed on it, because if you feed on it, they're just going to do it more and more and more. Well, if you tell your kids, and if they do it, and they turn around and walk away, friends have been made because of this. Rachel was telling me about someone who was just being mean to a person over and over and over again, and that person just kept turning around and walking away, and over time, they actually became friends. And that is a better person because of it. So we've got one better person because of something as simple as not giving in to that. Let's go to, okay, so I'm going to read these a little bit on the quick side. We will reason with others. We will be easier to convince those around us that the love of Christ that he shares for us. To instantly forgive those around us and let go of any anger. It will be a lot easier for us to forgive those if we don't have that evil, if we don't give into that earthly wisdom. We'll be able to bear good fruit that will last. To bring somebody into church and have this beauty that we have here, and it's great, but one wrong thing can deter that first fruit, that really good fruit, that perfect fruit. Unwavering is that idea of it's without partiality. Treating everyone the same, all humans are equal. Living what you speak, showing others that you have the knowledge and the wisdom by how to live your life. So if you don't have that wisdom yet, go out and ask somebody. Try and get it. That's what, I'm trying every single day if I don't know something, I want to know it, because I feel like I can arm myself with something better that where I can combat some of the bad that's out there in this world. And I'm not perfect. I know I'm not. But if I try, maybe I'll be a little bit better in the long run. Verse 18, let's go and describe that one here. The crop itself is righteousness that he's talking about. It can only be sown in by peace. So if we don't have that peace in our heart and we're not pure, then we're going to allow that anger to come out, and we will not sow the correct way. We've got, like verse 17 says, are those that can sow, wait, no, that's wrong. God knows what we need. Let's go to Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And James keeps going back, and he keeps with that understanding that let me reiterate some things that have already been said, but the truth is that if we don't seek his righteousness, then we will probably not be in his kingdom. So this term, I like this term. I'm not a human being, I'm a human doing, right? And I don't know if you've ever heard that or not, but I like it. So one translation says doing peace. And if we're doing peace, then we're actively participating and pursuing peace within ourselves and this congregation. And to do that, if we can do that, that will be vital to this congregation and vital to our growth and vital to our sustainability. And that is true godly wisdom. So if we can have that true godly wisdom within us, we can be successful. And not just being and doing. The last verse is saying basically that true wisdom is expressed in trying to bring people back to a state of righteousness by putting them at peace with Christ. I'm going to say it one more time because it kind of can go away. The last verse, okay, it says, true wisdom is expressed in trying to bring people back to a state of righteousness by putting them at peace with Christ. So if we use the peace portion and we fill our hearts with that pure wisdom, that godly wisdom, then we have a chance that we might actually be able to bring more to Christ, right? Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, concerns before we go up?
It's like the last part of 18 here.
Mhm.
It's not that the peace, it doesn't just happen. You have to make peace.
Mhm.
It's an active process.
It is. It's the same with fertilizer, right? So that's that piece, right? Fertilizer doesn't just happen. It takes, you've got, Richard's not here. When you put leaves and you put the compost, when you're building compost, it's a process. But when you use compost to sow in and to put it into the dirt, that's going to grow the fruits or vegetables that you have. You're going to get so much more out of it than you ever would anything else by just putting it in, by throwing some seeds out and seeing what grows and what doesn't. All right? Thanks, everyone. Jason will be here for the next 2 weeks, and I get a break. Thanks, all.